We just got some breaking numbers on Europe's economy from Danny there. We're looking to get more data today. You know, the Bloomberg headline was Europe is about to find out how bad the economy has become. How bad is Europe's economy at the moment in your assessment?
I mean, at this stage, it's looking as though Eurozone economic activity will probably undershoot the ECB's projection. I think the ECB is projecting GDP growth for the Eurozone of roughly 1.2%. For this year, but the leading indicators, whether they're the manufacturing PMI, the IFO Business Climate Index, and recent real-time economic activity, like we've just had the French GDP number, it looks as though not only will Eurozone GDP growth undershoot consensus tomorrow when they release the Q2 GDP number, but it will also probably underwhelm and undershoot the ECB's projections of 1.2. So this simply, in terms of the implications, I don't think it should push the euro much lower. It will be a headwind for the euro, but the reason not to expect the euro to edge much lower despite those disappointing eurozone growth numbers is that it's basically roughly discounted at this stage. The ECB has moved to an easing bias, an explicit easing bias last week. They're fully expected to cut interest rates in September. So we need to see worsening a leading indicator in the eurozone to really push the euro much lower.
Okay.
Do you expect to see more flows into safe haven assets? Because it looks like, although the ECB may be in an easing bias, their hands are pretty tied in terms of what they can possibly achieve without any fiscal help. And Germany has said pretty firmly last week on Bloomberg television, they're not going to be spending any more money regardless of the growth outlook.
No, that's a very good point. It's probably one of the constraints the ECB has in terms of implementing more aggressive and looser monetary policy. But simply from a forward guidance perspective, that should be enough to guide market expectations for aggressive ECB easing. And that's also one of the reasons why we don't expect much downside for the euro, despite expectations for a looser monetary policy in the eurozone. And that's largely because of the Eurozone's favorable balance of payments backdrop. You know, remember, the Eurozone has a fairly large current account surplus. Also, the euro is relatively undervalued based on relative measures of prices by roughly 10% on a trade-weighted basis. And so all these factors should act to underpin the euro despite prospect of easing from the ECB.